Takadosh Boker Or Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Yomi Daf Kuf Taled Amud Aleph 104A1. We are on the Gemara where the Gemara was talking about now when we're speaking about Miracheket Takerovim, right? That was Ammon and Moav. If you remember, they were Krovim to Israel. Ammon and Moav were Krovim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu distanced them that they shouldn't come into the Kahal. Umekarevet Terechokim. They're going to be Mekarev the Rechokim. Where do they learn that from? From Yitro. They're going to learn that from Yitro. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan, Bischar kir'en lo v'yochal lachem, in the reward of that Yitro comes and he says to his daughters, kir'en lo v'yochal lachem, zachu b'nei banav, so the b'nei banav, they were zocheh, yashuv lishkat hagazit, and they were going to be sitting in the Sanhedrin Gdolah. So they were sitting in lishkat hagazit. Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk, u'mishpechot sofrim, right? The mishpechot sofrim yoshvei yabetz, tir'atim shematim, shuchatim hem ha'kinim abayim, Mechamat avi bet revav, uchtiv atam, and it says over there, uvne keni choten Moshe, alu meir atmanim et bnei Yehuda, midbar Yehuda shebenegev arad, right? Vayelech vayeshev ta'am. So therefore, we see from here that the kinim were from the bnei choten Moshe, right? So it comes out, right, that they sat in lishkat hagazit. So they were zocheh, right, because of bringing in Moshe as a guest. So they were zocheh, right, to sit in the lishkat hagazit. Kuvdaled amud aleph.
Ready.
Yeah. And what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because of the mitzvah of chesed, when a person does chesed and they give food to the poor people, many times he'll even close his eyes from the reshaim. You know, there's a lot of reshaim, yeah? Yeah. But what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will close his eyes. Why? If a person comes and he gives tzedakah and he gives chesed, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and he closes his eyes from the Reshaim. Yes, we're talking about chesed.
Chesed for the
Yes.
Food for the ani.
Yes. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will close his eyes from the Reshaim, right? That they learn from Micha. Umashesh Shechina al Nevi'eh Habal, right? And he's going to be Mashesh Shechina on the Nevi'eh Habal. Yeah? Right? How do they learn that from? From the Chaver of Ido Hanavi. Right? The Chtiv says in the pasuk, "Vahi hem yoshvim al shulchan, vayidavar Hashem al navi asher yishivo." Right? Because they were sitting on the shulchan, and the words of Hashem were to the navi, which he came and he put them back. Okay, v'shigagatam ole zadon. Now, what does that mean? Their shigaga is like on purpose. Tam Rav Yudah Marav says, "Rav Elmaleh hilvahu Yonatan leDavid." If it wasn't for the fact that he was melaveh, right, to David bedarko. Right, when he ran away from Shaul and he gave him mazon, shteki karolechem lo ne'erga ov, right, ira kohanim. So therefore, they wouldn't have been killed. Velo nitra doeg adomi. Doeg adomi wouldn't have lost olam haba. Velo ne'erag Shaul, right, ushloshe banav. And he wouldn't have been killed, Shaul and his 3 children. Right? This is incredible to do with the ziknei ayir. Meaning, if be'emet, right, Yonatan would have come and given him mazon of 2 seudot, he wouldn't have had to go to Novira Kohanim because he didn't have any food. And then Doeg Adomi wouldn't have had to come and start saying, right, the Lashon Hara that he did. And then Shaul wouldn't have killed Novira Kohanim. And then, so everything started all because that he didn't get Seidah Laderech. He didn't get the provisions. And since he didn't get the provisions, right, that's why everything started. Yonatan did not give the provisions to David HaMelech. And since he didn't give the provisions to David HaMelech when he was running away from Shaul, that's why everything started. So therefore, that's why we're talking about giving to the poor people. So we're saying that at the end of the day, none of these things, look at the domino effect, right? You have David HaMelech running to the city of Nov. The entire city was killed out. Doeg Adomi was lost his olam haba, and Shaul and his 3 children were killed. Everything was because of this action. If he would have just given a mazon, nothing would have happened. What?
Well, why did he need them?
Next, umipnei ma lo manu et Achaz. The Gemara is now going to ask, 1 second. There was another king. His name was Achaz. Achaz, it didn't say anything about his olam haba. Why didn't it mention that Achaz did not get olam haba? So Amar Rabbi Yirmi bar Abba says Rabbi Yirmi bar Abba, mipnei shemutal ben shnei tzadikim, because he was placed between 2 tzadikim, between his father Yotam and his son Chizkiyahu. Right, and both of them were tzaddikim. So since he was placed between the 2 tzaddikim, so that's why Ki'ilu he still is considered part of Klal Yisrael, that he does get chelek lo olam haba. meaning because of the two tzaddikim, which is the father upwards and downwards. Says Rav Yosef Amar, you know why? He was embarrassed of Yoshiyahu, right? This is Yeshayahu Hanavi. Shneimar vayomer Hashem Yeshayahu, tzena likrat ochaz, ata ushad yashuv benecha, el ketze te'alat habrecha ha'elyona, el mesilat sedeh koves, right? Oh, right? He says, my koves. What does it mean koves? We're learning. He says, Ika da'amni dekavshinu la'apeh v'chalaf. Some people say that the pirush is that Achaz came and he hid his face until Yeshayahu should go by, so he doesn't recognize him, and he was embarrassed of his averot. And some people say uchla dekatzer sachaf areshev v'chalaf, and some people say that it was a fach the kli that they used in order for and he put it on his head, and therefore kilu that he shouldn't recognize him because he was embarrassed. By the way, from here we learn the yesod that if a person is embarrassed of something, he's still not considered a rasha gamur. For example, somebody does mechalel shabbat farhesia, right? If all of a sudden there's a very famous story, right? I think it was with the Baba Sali and others as well, right? That all of a sudden they're coming, and all of a sudden from far they see the Baba right away. He throws away the cigarette, or he throws it. The second that they do that, they're already embarrassed of doing it in front of the rabbi. That's it. He's not considered a mechalel shabbat farhesia, right? There has to be certain thing, right? Exactly. If he parks in front of the shul or he parks far away and then he starts walking, you understand? You know that the guy lives in Honolulu. You understand? He's coming. That means but the fact that he's parking far away, he's still embarrassed of his actions. And those embarrassment of the actions actually saved him. That's what happened here. Achaz, it's true. He was a Rasha. So technically speaking, he shouldn't get Olam Haba. But, and therefore we should have brought it down with the Melachim that did not get out of Olam Haba. But the fact that he was embarrassed by his actions and he was afraid, as if Yoshiyahu shouldn't recognize him. So then he was saved. So ask the Gemara, Mipnei ma lo manu et Amon. What about Amon? Amon also was how do you call this? Was also Rasha, and he should have been a king that did not get Olam Haba. And so the Gemara, Mipnei kevodol shel Yoshiyahu, because of his son was a tzaddik, Yoshiyahu. So because of that, that's why Amon, right? We say Yeshayahu ben Amon, Melech Yehuda. Right? This is Bimei Yoshiyahu. This is Chazon. Yeah. So he says like this, Menashe Nami, right? He says Menashe Nami lo nimne because of the kavod of Chizkiyahu. Says 1 second. So why do we bring down Menashe? Menashe, he had a son. Who was the son? Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu was a tzaddik. So if you're already telling me that the tzaddik came and saves on the father, so that's why we didn't bring down Amon because of Yoshiyahu. So why do we bring down Menashe? You have Chizkiyahu. So says the Gemara, Bera mezake Abba. He says a son is mizakeh the father, right, through his sitkut. Abba lo mizakeh bera. But the father is not going to be mizakeh his son. Tichtiv, it says in a pasuk, ve'en miyadi matzil. What does that mean? En Avraham matzil et Ishmael, ve'en Yitzchak matzil et Esav. Something incredible. It only works downwards to upwards. It does not work upwards to downwards. So therefore, Avraham Avinu cannot save Ishmael, right, from Onesh, if he was going to get Onesh Shamayim, right? Again, obviously, this is according to the Shita and the Bereshit Rabbah that he actually died as a Rasha and he didn't do Teshuvah. Because if you say that he did do Teshuvah, so you don't need that. But there's according to that Shita. And, right, Yitzchak is not going to save Esav Rasha, right? So to here, Chizkiyahu is not going to save his son Menashe from Onesh Shamayim, and that's why we said Menashe does not get a portion in Olam Haba. So
who is the benefit from the Shkoyot of our Avot?
No. You could get benefits, but they cannot save you from Gehinam. That's why he says here, En Olam, and he does not get an Olam Haba. So that's why when we said here, Amon was not counted because of his son that was a tzaddik. So we asked, what about now Chizkiyahu? That Chizkiyahu was the father of Menashe. So therefore, Menashe should not be counted because Chizkiyahu was his father. So we answered, it only goes upwards. It doesn't go downwards. Yeah? So says the Gemara, Hashta dati lacha. Right now that you're coming and you're telling me this, that a ben tzaddik could come and could be Mizakeh the father. Achaz nami no nimne shukodo shel Chizkiyahu. So Achaz also, right, he says, should not be counted because of his son, Chizkiyahu, that was a tzaddik. Meaning we went and we said it because he was embarrassed. Right? That's what we just said at the beginning, right, a few seconds ago. We just said he was embarrassed. He says, you don't need to do that. Why you don't need to do that? Because his son was a tzaddik. So even if he wasn't embarrassed, I don't care if he wasn't embarrassed, but the fact that he has a son tzaddik, fine. So says the Gemara, right? Yoyakim. So why don't we bring down Yoyakim? Yoyakim was also Rasha, right? That he was a king, right? And also he wasn't mentioned. Why not? So says the Gemara, Mishum de Rabchia Baravua, Berebiavua, because of Rabchia Baravua. Tamar Rabchia Baravua, Ktiv, it's written, Gulguluto shel Yoyakim, Zot ve'od acheret, right? Which is, this is like a nekama, right? Which was done already, and there's another one which is going to get to it. What does that mean exactly? So we're going to see the story. Listen to the story. Zekenod de Rabbi Preda, the Zaken, right, of Rabbi Preda, Ashkach Kulgalta, Tavakashadia B'Sharei Yerushalayim. So this is the grandfather of Rabbi Preda. He comes, his name was Rabbi Chia Rabbi Avuya, right? He finds a Gulgolet in Sharei Yerushalayim, right? You know what a Gulgolet is, the skull, right, of a person, right, in the gates of Yerushalayim. Uchtiv ba, and it's written, Zot ve'od acheret. Yeah, this and another one. Kivara. So he buried it, right? Velo yikbera. But it didn't, no matter how deep he digged, right, it was always above. So he doesn't understand, right? Again, he did it. Kivara, lo yikabra. Amar, he said, this has to be Gulgulato shel Yoyakimi. This has to be the Gulgulat of Yoyakim. Dichtiv bebez, it's written, Kevurat hamor yikaver sachov ve'ashlech mehala sharei Yerushalayim. That means just like you're not going to be kover a chamor shemet, so too there's not going to be a kvura for this body. Okay? So he comes and he says, so that's why no matter what, he wasn't able to bury it. Amar, so he says to himself, Malkahu ve'lo yikashar zazul. He says, he's a king at the end of the day. If Yoyakim at the end of the day was a king, it's a zilzul. So what did he do? Kiracha b'shirai ve'otva b'sifta. So he put it in meshi, he put it like in a silk cloth, and he put it in a box, right? Chazita tivitu. So all of a sudden now his wife, she opens up and she sees this skull, right, in the thing. So Savraha deiteta kamaitava. He thought that this is his first wife, which means he thought that this was the skull of. Huh? She thought, yeah. She thought it was his first wife. So therefore, his first wife passed away. So now she thought that he was so attached to her. So he just so he kept it. So what did he do? Tehalo kaminche. So he says that what? That they couldn't. He couldn't forget about her. So what did she do? Shagra tanur klata. So she put on the fire and she threw it inside and it got burnt. And that's what it means in the pasuk to do with the. That's why it was written on the skull. Zot ve'od acheret. There's going to be two nikamot that was going to happen. Zot, which is basically the gulgolet, which is going to be thrown outside. Ve'od acheret, it's going to be burnt. There's two things. There was the throwing out that it was going to be always bachutzot, that it was going to be not buried. And number two is going to be burned. That's why it said zot ve'od acheret. So you see from here that he actually had two different punishments. So because of those two different punishments, that's why he had kaparat avonot. Because of those kaparat avonot, that's why he did get a chelak l'mbah. You understood? That's why you got a chelak l'mbah. Anya, we learned in a Braita. Amar b'shimon elazar, says b'shimon elazar. Bishvil, right? At the end of the day, because of the sin of Chizkiyahu, when he was chole, right? That he comes and he says, "Ana Hashem zechor et asher lachti lefnecha be'emet u'lev shalem atov be'enecha asiti," right? He comes and he says a cause that he sinned again to tell Yeshayahu, right? When he came to tell him that he's going to live for another 15 years, Ma'ot. How does he know? So he's bishvil ma'ot, because of this ot that he asked for an ot. Nochrim achlu al shulchano. Of the avodah zarah, they were eating at his table, right? But there it says beradach beladan melech bavel, right? They were eating at his table, right? So he had to come and he had to have them at his table, at his meal. Bishil shenochrim al shulchano vegaram galu lebanav. And because you had nochrim eating at his table, that's why his children had to go, right, to galut. So it comes out from here that achnasat orchim sometimes is considered a sin.
Pesach.
That's also very important. You have to be very careful on that, right? On Pesach. Yeah. But that's what we just said here. One more time. It was one Avirah caused another Avirah. He went and he got sick. So he went and he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please remember all that I went in front of you and that I was a big tzaddik. Now, usually we always remember that the Gemara says that you should never be toleh in your tzidkut. You should always be tolen other people's tzidkut. Because if you're going to be tolen other people's tzidkut, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu will remember you. But if you're going to tolen your own tzidkut, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will only remember you because of other people. And that they also learn from this. But what was more than that is the fact that he went and he said this, so it caused another sin. What was the sin? He asked, give me a sign that I'm going to be cured. Because Yeshayahu Navi came and he told him, by the way, you're going to be cured, you're going to live for another 15 years. So he said, give me a sign. Well, I'm asking for a sign. Right? So what happened? Fine, they gave him a sign. Now that he did that, Nochrim, they ate on his table. The Goyim came, as it said over there, Beladach, Beladan, the kings of Bavel, they came when he was cured and they ate at his table. And because of that, that caused galut to his children. So says the Gemara, Mesayah lechizkiah, this is a proof to Chizkiah. The Amar Chizkiah, says Chizkiah, Kol hamezamen aved kochavim letoch beto umeshamesh alav, anybody that's going to come and to bring a goy into his house and he's going to serve him, yeah, just like Chizkiyahu Melech did. Yeah, because the wife of Chizkiyahu came and she served them. So he says, in such a case, right, what happens? Gorem galut lebanav. You're going to cause galut to your children. Shneimar, umibanecha asher yetzu mimecha asher tolid yikachu hayu sarisim be'echal melech Bavel. They're going to be in the right in the king of Bavel. So now the Gemara is going to bring on the pasuk and is going to explain it. It says, "Vayismach alem Chizkiyahu." Chizkiyahu was very happy. Vayarem et bet nechuto. He comes and he showed him everything, all the kesef zahav, the kelim, the otzrot, everything. Amar Rav says, "My bet nechuto. What is bet nechuto? Ishto, right? What does that mean? Ishto ishkat alehem. She came and she gave them to drink, right? So he comes and he says, right? So here it's like it's being mafchit the tzela of the adam. Ushmuel Amar bet ginazav. So there's a machloket. Was it that his own wife came and served them, or was it that he showed them the bet ginazav? Heralayim. Rabbi Yochanan says, Zayin ochel zayin. Kli zayin, which are made from a matechet, is stronger than other matachot. Heralayim. That's what he showed them. He says, Milashon haka'ah, because barzel hits each other. So he comes and he's, or nishicha, right? That he's coming and he's hitting. What? Yeah? What? So he says, like this. He says, after he finished this, what happened? He comes and we spoke about the sin which caused the churban. So now we're going to speak about echa, meaning like this. This is remember, it's a domino effect. We just spoke about what caused the galut to the children because there was a achnasat orchim, which was actually an avera. What was the achnasat orchim avera? Because he caused them to come to his house and then he had to serve them. But now we're going to go into the other concepts of the churban. So the churban, echa. He comes and he says this, echa, hayta lezona. He comes and he says like this. Yeah, somebody in the middle of learning is going to start doing those things. How are you going to be by yourself? Amar Rava says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, name Rabbi Yochanan. Why is it that they got this word echa to go on them, to punish them in the Churban? Why dafka the word echa? Because they were over al 36 kritut Shabbat Torah, because they were. So one more time, he went and he was over on 36 kritut, which are brought down in Masechet kritut. So that's why you have the numerical value of echa. What's the numerical value of echa? 36. Yeah, 36. No. So he says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, why were they looking at aleph bet? Did you realize that the entire echa is all aleph bet, right? Echa, but right, the entire it goes through aleph bet, gimel daled hey, goes through the aleph bet. Because they went on against the entire Torah, which was written with an aleph bet. No, the echa is mesudar al aleph bet. So the reason why echa is mesudar al aleph bet is because they were over on the Torah, which was given with the aleph bet. Yasheva badad. So that was the echa. Why was it aleph bet? Because they were over on the Torah. The Torah was given with aleph bet. Yasheva badad. What does it mean Yasheva badad? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ani amarti vayishkon Yisrael betach badad en Yaakov el eretz dagam v'tirosh av shamav yar futal. What does that mean? I wanted that there should be in the beracha in Israel that it should be badad, which means that they could come, they could have bitachon, they'll be protected from their enemies, right, from everything. They're going to have shefa. Achshav yubadad moshavam. Now it's only going to be puranut. Right? Why? Because everyone is going to be what? They're going to have the tal, right? He says the tal is a do. Yeah. So he comes and he says like this. He says now it's going to be badad moshavatam, which means that you're going to have that they're going to be ma'us. They're going to be discussing. So therefore, they're going to be by themselves, but they're not going to be by themselves because they're going to get the tal that's going to come down on them, and then they're going to have blessings, and they're going to have shefa. The exact opposite, because they're going to be disgusting in the eyes of the people. So therefore, they're going to be right distance right from the people. Okay, Ha'ir Rabati Am. What does that mean? That they're going to come now and they're going to have right the city, which is going to be a lot of people in it. Right, there was a city with a lot of people. Yerushalayim, it was always with a lot of people. Right, so he says Amar Rabba Rabbi Yochanan Shayu Masin Ktana Legdola Gdola Lekatan, which means that they weren't getting married at the proper times. They were getting married right with much more mugarim. In order they should have a lot of children. Right, he says. If right now you're not going to have children like somebody that's more, so therefore the bata because the same thing. So because of that, they used to do it purposely in order to have a lot of children. Okay, so he comes and he says, so they could have children immediately. He doesn't mean here katan mamash, obviously, because then obviously they're not going to be able to have children. But it was the concept. Okay, ma, what's lotov? If it's literally, it's not good. But we just said it's not literally. We said that the entire purpose was in order they should have more children. So. What does it mean now? What does it mean now they have an almana? So Amar of Yudah Marav says of Yudah Marav, ke almana velo almana mamash. It's like an almana, but not almana mamash. It's like a man, right? That's like a woman. The husband went to Mdirat Yam and he wants to go back. So therefore, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitrachek, he didn't completely abandon them. Why? That's why it says Haytak almana. It's not an almana. An almana, the husband doesn't come back. Kaddish, that's it. They say Kaddish and that's it. Ka almana, she's like an almana. Meaning, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and he distanced himself, he's going to come back. Rabati v'goyim sarati v'medinot. Amar Rava Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rava the name of Yochanan. Kol makom she'en olchin, na'asin tsarin la'adonehen. Do you know that any place where Bnei Yerushalayim used to go b'shevi, they used to be right? They used to be the heads, the leaders. And the truth is that you even see even until today. What does that mean? It doesn't matter where they go, they're always the Rosh. Why? Because they're always mechubadim. They're always the doctors, the this, the that. They're always the smartest. That's what they have. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Bright. There were two people that they were captured by Hara Carmel. So the Shabai was going after them. 104b. So one of them comes and he tells his friend, Gamal lefanenu suma be'acham me'anea. He says the gamal which is in front of us, right, is a suma in one of its eyes. Now it's got two nodot. It's got two flasks. One of them is wine and one of them is oil. And two bnei adam managim ota. Echad mehem Yisrael v'echad mehem nochri. One of them is a Jew and one of them is a nochri. Amaleh and Shabai says the Shabai, Amke she'oref. Right, you guys are mamash. Like Amke she'oref. How do you know that? Amrulo, they said, Hagamal, right, me'asabim shelefanea. Right, we say, mitzad echad rochelet, mitzad she'eno roa, eno ochelet. Meaning, how do we know that he's blind in one of his eyes? Do you realize that he's only eating on one side? A gamal is walking, so it's going to eat on both sides. He's blind in one of his eyes. So he could only see on one side. So since he's only seeing on one side, he's only eating from that side. So that's how they knew that he was going to be blind in one of the eyes. Now, to unashte nodot, he had two nodot, one of them yain, one of them shemen. Now, how do they know that? Yeah? So he comes and he says, Shel yain netaftef v'shokea. He says wine, it drops, meaning that, whenever you have a bucket, sometimes drops come down from the bucket and it goes on the floor. So he says the drops of wine, they go down and it goes into the ground. Because remember that wine gets absorbed into the ground. It's nispag. Shel shemen metaftef v'tzaf. Oil, it drops on the floor, but it's tzaf ala karka, meaning it stays above the ground. It doesn't get absorbed into the ground. So that's how they knew, right? That's how they knew that one bucket, right? Remember, he's carrying two buckets, on the camel. One of them had wine, one of them had oil. As the goy asked them, "How did you know?" He says, "I just told you now." Now there are two people which are manigimota. One of them is a Jew and one of them is a goy. How do they know? Nochri nifne laderech, right? Nochri is going on the derech mash, because he's not sanua. Ve'Yisrael, but the Yisrael nifna litzadim. What does that mean? Right? He's always going to go on the side whenever he has to, right, do whatever his necessities or whatever it is that he needs. That's niut, right? That means basically the goy, he'll do his necessity, he'll do everything on the derech. He doesn't care. The Jew will go on the side. So Radaf acharehim, so he ran after them. Umatzak kedivrehem. He saw everything that they said was correct. He saw the Gamal was Bemet blind in one eye. He saw Bemet, they had the two buckets, one of them wine, one of them oil. He saw that the two people leading them, one there was a Jew, one there was a Goy. So he comes back, he comes, he kisses them on their head. He brings them, he was dancing in front of them. They became the sarim on their masters. And he let them go. That's an incredible concept. Huh? Of course, it's the Shabbat. He let them go. Yeah? מה? Bachot tivke balayla. They're crying. Right? But why does it say bachot tivke? Why? Bachot tivke, שתי בכיות. שתי בכיות הללו למה? אמר רבא אמר רבי יוחנן, אחד המקדש ראשון ואחד המקדש שני. On the two Bet HaMikdash. That's why we have, right, the two of them. So Yirmiyahu Navi was really on the first Churban Bet HaMikdash. But he wrote bachot tivke because he already knew about the Bet HaMikdash Hashani that was also going to be Nechrab. So he started crying on both of them. Okay? Balayla. Why Balayla? He says Aliske Laila. What does that mean? Right? It was because of the sin that happened in the nighttime. Shneimar, Vatisa kol ha'eda v'yitenu et kolam, v'yivku ha'am balayla hu. Remember that the Chet HaManaglim, right, happened, there was the Chet, they were crying at nighttime. So because of the Laila, that's why they came and they started crying. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah, says Rabbi in the name of Yochanan. Yeah, you're checking ChatGPT. Yeah, he says Oto Hayom Lel Tisha B'Av Haya. He says that night was the night of Tisha B'Av. Yeah, so he says Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Yeah, Atem bechitim bechida shel chinam, v'ani ekva lecha bechiyat ledorot. He says you guys were crying for no reason, and now I'm going to give you a reason, right, to cry. Davar acher, another explanation. Balayla. What is balayla? Shekol bocher balayla kolo nishma. Do you know when you cry during the nighttime, people hear it more than during the daytime? Right? Why? Usually in the daytime there's a lot of noise, right? And therefore, since during the daytime there's a lot of noise, therefore if somebody cries, you don't hear it as much. At the nighttime, when people cry at nighttime, right? First of all, people they are milrer more to cry, right? And plus, you could hear it more. Many times during the daytime, people see you, so you're embarrassed to cry. At nighttime, nobody really sees you, so you start crying more. But not only that, there's less noise around. So since there's less noise around, so therefore people could actually hear you more. Tavar acher, another explanation, right? When it says here, so for even though he says Yerushalayim tivke balayla, because then it's going to be more rachamim, right? But it says, right, still en la menachem. Another explanation balayla, shekol boche balayla b'kochvim umazalot bochin imo. Anybody that comes and cries at nighttime, even the kochvim umazalot are going to cry for him as well, because again, they're going to have, right, they're going to have mercy on him. Okay, דבר אחר, another explanation balayla, shekol boche balayla, shomei kulo boche kenegdo. Many times at nighttime, when you hear somebody cry, you cry with them. Meaning during the daytime, it's not as much, but during the nighttime, it's much more. There was actually this is a very famous story, by the way. There was a story with a woman, right, that she was a shechina of Rabbi Gamliel. Shemet bena, that her child died. Every night she used to come and cry. Shamar Rabbi Gamliel kola ubacha kenegda. So Rabbi Gamliel every single night he used to hear, and he used to cry also. Until his eyelids fell out. Mama, she was crying so much. The next day they realized they took her out of the shchuna. Why? They were causing the rabbi suffering. So what? They took her out. Why? Because if not, it was gonna. Now again, when it says there's a whole thing there. What does it mean that she had her tears on her cheeks? It's like a woman that she's crying on her first husband, right? So she's mamash like kanavel. Right? Remember that when the first husband dies, it's very, very powerful for her. So therefore, she comes and she starts crying. So he says, right? Their oppressors were heads. Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shekol HaMetzah L'Yisrael Na'aseh Rosh. Anybody that oppresses Bnei Yisrael, they have to become a leader. They have to be right ahead. Kilo mu'af la'asher mutzakla. Right here, we're talking about the king of Assyria. Right, that he went to be matzik on Eretz Yisrael. It was not tayef. He wasn't tired, and he wasn't atzlan either. He wasn't lazy. Right, because he said he already put them in galut pamachat, and now they come to do it a second time around. So he says kaet arishon. Right now, Melech Hashur is going to come and put them into galut again. Hechal artzal Zevulun v'artzal Naftali. So he was makel be'ad Melech to put them only the people of Zevulun and Naftali. Right? So he says v'acharon ichpid. But the last one of Assyria, which is going to be the third time around, which is going to be Sancheriv, he's going to get it much worse than the other ones. But he's going to send everybody to Galut. So the first time, they didn't send everybody to Galut. It was done only two of them. Eretz Zevulun and Eretz Naftali. It wasn't everybody. Derech Hayam. What does it mean now, Derech Hayam? Ever Yarden, right? Ve'Galila Goyim, right? That's all of Eretz Yisrael, which is Golel to Moshechet. So Amar Rabba Rabbi Yochanan, Shekol HaMetzik L'Yisrael eno ayef. Meaning, mamash, they come and they do things against Israel. They're not tired. You think it's like, what? They're not tired? They don't get tired. Right, mamash, they don't get tired. They come, they'll just continue going and going and going. And they won't get tired. They could get beaten up. They could get anything that you want. But they won't get tired. Lo alechem kol ovre derech. What does that mean? Yirmiyahu Navi comes and he says, right, what is it? Look what's happening. They didn't even feel what's happening on their skins. Amar Rabba Amar Rabbi Yochanan mikan lekulbana, right, min Torah. This pasuk is coming and bringing you of a kulbana, which is when a person comes and he says it's tzara to his friend, you have to say, Lo tavo zot alecha kemo sheba elai. A person should always say to their friend, they shouldn't, bar minan, bekitzu. Right, what does it mean? Right, lo alenu. You ever heard that expression? Lo alenu. Or bar minan. Right, what is that expression? Lo alenu is like lo alechem kol over derech, meaning that when somebody's saying something bad that happened to them, a person should always say it shouldn't happen to you. Right? They should. That's what you just learned from this pasuk. Kol over derech. Amar Rav asauni ki ovrei al dat. They made me like ovrei al dat. What does that mean? Right? They made me like anshe Sedom, that they were over on dat. Dilu bisong tiv Hashem intira Sedom gofri va'esh. And Yerushalayim etzvet mimaron shalach esh ve'atzmotav ve'yidena. What does that mean? Yerushalayim mamash was nidon like esh, just like Sedom. Right? Mamash like that. So he says ve'yigdol avon batamim mechatat Sedom. Now you're going to ask, what? Anshe Yerushalayim were actually worse than Sedom? Right? He says v'chi maso panim yesh badavar. He says what? There's a maso panim. What's going on? Chas v'shalom. How could it be? Right? Mamach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he destroyed Sodom legamre. He didn't destroy Yerushalayim legamre. So if be'emet they were worse than Sodom, what's going on? So Amar Rabba Amar Yochanan, midah yitera ita b'Yerushalayim l'shalom, yida b'Sodom, there was a midah yitera more than Sodom. B'Sodom it's written, Inez yavon, Sodom al-chodech gaon, sivat lechem, yad ani v'evyon lo echazika. Right, which means that they didn't have any rachamanud. They didn't give them, you remember, they didn't give any poor, they didn't give any tzedakah, nothing, no chesed. Yerushalayim it's written, Yedin Hashim rachamanu b'shri yalden. They even cooked their own children. Right, mamash, they were giving the flesh of their own children. So they were rachamot and chavrotehen, even though mamash, they were giving them to eat from their own children. So he says, Silach ol abirai Hashem bekirbi. What does that mean? The Hashem made all abirei Yisrael psulim uchlushim bekirba, just like a mesilah, which is going to be destroyed. When you have a path that you're going to trample upon it, it's going to destroy it. So to silah here is like the mesilah. So you're going to come and you're going to stamp or trample upon it. So he says, here we're talking about that all the abirim, they became psulim. Kadam shomel chavro, nifsala matbea zu. It became like trample, meaning this matbea, you can't use it anymore. Patsu alayich pihem, right? The oyevim came and they started laughing at us, right? And it started with the letter pei. So he comes and he says, Amar Rabba Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishlima Yigdim Pe Le'ayin. Doesn't make sense. In the alphabet, what comes? Samech. What's after Samech? Ayin. And then it's Pei. Why did Pei come before Ayin? So he says, Bishirim Raglim Shamru B'fihem Ma Shelo Ra'u Be'enehem. Because their mouths came before their Ayin. Their mouths came before the Ayin. The mouth is the Peh. The Ayin is the eyes. They said things with their mouths before looking with their eyes, didn't see. So for the Peh, they came before the Ayin there.
Preemptive thinking of negativity.
For sure.
Before they saw what it is.
For sure. And that's why the Peh came before the Ayin. The letter Peh came before the Ayin. Ochle ami achlu lechem, Hashem lo karau. What does that mean now? The ones which are eating, my nation are eating the breads, which they didn't call Hashem. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ochle ami achlu lechem. It means kol haochel min lechman shel Yisrael. Anybody that eats, right, from the bread of Israel, which means that they come and they steal and they take to'em ta'am lechem, which means he's going to be ne'neh. מהסעודה שלו. וכל שאינו אוכל מלחמן של ישראל, אינו תואם טעם לחם. But he's not going to be נהנה מסעודתו, right? Because it's meaning that the goyim, they benefit, they enjoy eating from our bread. They enjoy it. They enjoy. Hashem lo karau, Rav Amar elu hadayanim. These are the dayanim that they were matea tadin. And therefore it comes out that ba'avon zeh, right, is eating the lechem of Yisrael to the Yevim. Shmuel Amar elu mlamdei tinokot. These are the mlamdei tinokot, right, that they didn't learn properly. And therefore what happens is that they were coming and they were eating their breads to Yisrael, to their enemies. Miminaan, who's counting them? Amar Ravashi says, and Sheknes Gedolah, and Sheknes Gedolah, here its kavanah is that how could know what's going to happen in Olam Haba? So he says, and Sheknes Gedolah knows exactly what's happening, and that's why they're saying it with Ruach HaKodesh. So Amar Rav Yudah Marav, Yikshu Od Limnot Echad. Do you know, right, now we're going back to in Sheknes Gedolah that they wanted to count somebody else that did not have Olam Haba. Okay? So listen to this. Right? Amar Rav Yudah Marav, Yikshu Od Limnot Echad. Right? They wanted to count one other king also that he didn't have Olam Haba. Because until now we finished the stories of the Galut and everything. Now they wanted to count another one. Who is this other one exactly? Right? Who was this?
No.
How do you know?
No.
It's written there. No, you're cheating. Yeah, it's Rashi. Right? It's Shlomo Melech. Ba'ad demut yokno shel aviv comes David HaMelech nishtatcha lifnehem and came in front of them. Velo ishkichu alea. They didn't pay attention. Meaning the Anshe Knesset Gedolah came and they wanted to count Shlomo Melech that also he didn't have Olam Haba. And what happened? David HaMelech comes and he starts stopping them. Ba'esh min hashamayim v'lichacha esh v'safsalehem. Came a fire from the heaven, and they still didn't. And it started. How do you say it? It started coming on their safsal. It started like burning their. All of a sudden they felt that. In your car that you could put the thing. The heater starts coming and warming up. The bottom part of your chair. Yeah. So it starts. They start feeling the heat. Nada. Lo ishkichu alea. יצא בת קול ואמרה להם, חזית הישמעים למלאכתו לפני מלכים ניצב על ידי. He says what? I don't understand. מי שהקדים ביתי לביתו. Right? Somebody that came and he built the Bet HaMikdash before the Bet Yad Lebanon. ולא עוד אלא שביתי בנה בשבע שנים. It took 7 years. וביתו בנה ב13 שנה. It took 13 years. לפני מלכים נתייצב. He was in front of the kings. אבל יתייצב לפני חשקים, and he's not going to be in גיהינם between the מלכים הרשעים. ולא השכיחה עליה. Again, they didn't pay attention. Meaning they were saying, look, he first built the Bet HaMikdash and then he built his own home. The Bet HaMikdash he built in 7 years. His own home took 13. Meaning he was much more atzlan. He was much more lazy because of the pasuk. Right? But there's going to be a pasuk now. So he comes and he says, what does that mean? Yatsa bat kol. The bat kol comes and he says, yeah, ve'amra hamimecha yishalamena ki ma'asta ki ata tivchar velo ani. He says, what? You guys are going to come and start paying tashlumei onesh shel adam. That you are going to say that Shlomo Melech is not going to get to Olam Haba. It's not talui becha, talui bi, right? So it's not talui behem, right? Once they heard that, they stopped. Only once they heard that, right? Everyone with me or not? I'm going to ask you a question. What do I care what the rabbis are going to say?
That's what we said generally. Yeah.
Sanhedrin, no, that's an apikoros. Now you have to be careful. That's not a pikuros we just learned it. Right? But the question is, right? The question though is, the question though is, Ribono Shel Olam, what's going on? And they're going to come and they're going to say there's somebody else, Shlomo Melech. Right? If Hashem doesn't agree, Hashem doesn't agree.
Sanhedrin.
Yeah, even if it's Sanhedrin, therefore. So 1 second. So listen to this. Listen to this. Says the Maharsha in Madura Batra to Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Yod Amud Bet. Okay, listen to this. This is a Maharsha. Yeah, Maharsha, right? Maharsha, Madura Batra. It's not the regular Maharsha. Meaning, if you open up a regular Maharsha, it's not there. Maharsha in the Madura Batra, in the second Madura, he comes and he writes down like this. He comes and they ask there in the Gemara in Batra, Anan heicha chazitun hatan. How are the rabbis in Olam Haba? How are the rabbis in Olam Haba? You remember this is the person that he had a clinical death, and the father came to the son and he said, "What do you see?" And he said, "Elyonim lamata v'tachtonim lamata." He said, "Everything is a world, an upside down world." I saw. See, he comes and he says, according to Rashi, that he says Elyonim lamata is ashirim, right? The ashirim in this world are on the top, and in Olam Haba they're going to be in the bottom because money you could buy in this world, but you can't buy nothing in the next world. So therefore, the people with the money they're going to be on the top, but afterwards they're going to be at the bottom. So he comes and he says, right, as follows. He comes and he says, what's going on? So, Yeshli Hashem Mashkata Beperek Chelek. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Says Rav Yehuda, Bikshu Od Limnot Echad. Right? They wanted to count another one. דמות דיוקנו של אביו, נשתיח לפניהם וכולי. יצא בת קול ולא השכיח, שצריך להבין, מה יכפל לדוד, אם הם ימנו אותו בתוך אותם של החלק הבא? He says, what does David HaMelech care? David HaMelech is going to come, he's going to stop them, and then they come, they start setting a fire, then a bat call, then a second bat call. What does he care? מה מעלה ומוריד בעולם הבא? אם הקדוש ברוך הוא ייתן לו חלק הבא. ומכל שכן קשה על הבת קול, מן השמיים, זה צריך להשקיע בדבריהם. אלא צריך לומר דוודאי האמת כן. For sure it's like that. תלמיד חכם גוזר בעולם הזה ומקיים דבריו בעולם הבא. The second that they gave a פסק דין in this world, קדיש, that's it. ולכן and therefore נתיירא דוד. David was afraid. הוא ביקש שלא ימנו אותו. So David is pleading to not do that. Right? וכן הבת קול ביקש מהם הזאת. וזה שמה כאן ששאל, ואנן תלמידי חכמים, אף אם הם בחייהם בעולם הזה, איך יעתינם בעולם הבא? He says, one second, but in this world, we're also powerful. Because we are powerful in this world, because if we're going to be gozer, we are mekayem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mekayem. So therefore, if we're going to be down here so powerful, what's going to happen in the next world? So he comes and he says, and therefore he went, he says, how's it going to be olam haba? Ve'eshiv, kemodi itnum ba'olam hazeh, just like you're going to be in this world, shedvarenu nishmaim ve'kayamim, that whatever we say is going to be paskind. You're right. So the Amei Aratzot and the Pikorsim, they're not going to listen. Doesn't matter. They say, Ma'yahanu le'Rabbanan. What do they need? Yeah? He says, but, right, we know that the psak is a psak din. Yeah? Yeah. So he says, Ken lemala ba'olam haba. That means the Talmidei Chachamim will be the exact same down here and down up there. Olam hafuch ra'iti is different. Because that's something different. But the Talmidei Chachamim, completely different world. Dorshei Reshimot. Says the Gemara, Dorshei Reshimot Yomrim, they used to say, Kulan ba'im olam haba. Everyone used to come to olam haba except for Bilam. Shneimar li gilev le'Menshe ve'Efraim ha'oz, Rashi yodem echuki. Moav sirachsi alei dom ashich na'alai. Right, na'ali alai pleshet tuturai. Li gilad is achav. Shenafal b'namo Gilad. Menashe is Menashe, k'mashmao. Ephraim ha'oz, Roshi is Yerovam, that Yerovam and Neva came from Ephraim. Yehuda mechuki is Achitofel. Right, so therefore it's going to be Achitofel. So according to that, it comes out that he came from Yehuda. Moav Sirachzi is going to be Gechazi, Shelakal Isker Rechitza, that he got hit because of the Rechitza, because of the Tzarat. Aledom Ashich Na'ali is Doeg Adomi. Alai Peleshet Doeg, Melchol Bifnei Ribon Shalom. Im Yavod David Sharega Pelishti Vorich Shet Banecha Gat. Mata Oselo. What are you going to do to him? Malen Alai Lesotem Lim Zelezeh. I'm going to make them Reim Zelezeh, which means that according to this Shita, this is Dorshei Reshimot, everybody did get olam haba, except for Bilam and Rashad, that we're going to speak about another time. Meaning even Menashe, everybody, all those people, Gechazi, Menashe, they all get olam haba, right? Again, according to Dorshei Reshimot, it's machloket. Dorshei Reshimot says yes. The other opinion said no. There's two different opinions. According to this Dorshei Reshimot, they wanted to be Doresh Adam Sukim, that all these people did get olam haba.
Even Doeg?